heart of gold is what I'm after, to have and hold until I die. A love that's true, a little laughter, and someone who won't make me cry. I want to be a funny kind and always keep a sunny mind, even when the thunder starts to roll. For I believe you get much more when you give people credit for some good down deep in their soul. And I've been told, when you stop loving, your heart turns cold like a winter night, but the world grows bright, and you make it heaven when you unfold a heart of gold. It was a very poor time, but my mother had piano lessons. So when I would go in and start to play around on the piano, she said, "I want to teach you how to read." My mother sang and played, and she wrote some music. And then my sister, actually my half-sister, she also sang and wrote and played organ in church in California for years. We ordinarily came to Corning on weekends to buy groceries. There was just only one grocery store in Mount Etna. This is the high school in Corning, Iowa, and I spent all my 4 years of high school in this building. This is the auditorium of Corning High School, and we did our plays here, our concerts, and then there were so many assemblies visiting people traveling through the country. And I remember especially, I probably was 13 or 14, this composer of Katie, World War I song. He was here, and I enjoyed hearing that, and I think I even spoke to him a little bit afterward on the street. Well, when I was a student here, this was the music room. We had a wonderful teacher from Des Moines, Florence Coughlin, and she was very good, and I was a boy soprano, of course, so I always got to do the first tenor parts. And sometimes we were doing something, and she'd say, "Merrill, you sing this note," and so I would, and it was really like a woman's voice, because my voice hadn't changed.
I was in the same high school class as Merrill Sparks, and that's where I remember him. We were not only in the same high school class, but we also were isolated during our junior and senior years. About 25 of us took normal training class, and my name being Scott and Merrill Sparks, we sat together in about every normal training class. And once in a while, we'd get to chatting instead of listening to the teacher.
I really didn't know him too good in high school because he was in the normal training part of it, and I was in the agriculture part of it. And we never associated very much. But my sister was in several plays with Merrill, and she was a lovely singer, and her and Merrill used to get together and oh, I tell you, it was some days you just left kind of snowbound because uh, it was so beautiful.
Oh, Mary Jane was in my class. That's who they used to sing together. And they would, when she was visiting us, this was Don's sister, they would, make beautiful music together, and we would enjoy.
There were fine people here. The Snodgrasses, they were very musical, and Margaret uh, traveled in Europe. The English teacher, Mrs. Estes, was very good, and we had Shakespeare and Chaucer and people like that with her. Interesting man also was Verrill Davis, and he was our science instructor. A very strong, robust, athletic man who insisted on great discipline in his classes. So, but anyway, we all survived. We lived with people here most of the time. Then later on, a man bought a bus, and then we could start coming daily by bus.
This normal training class taught us to go out and be teachers in rural schools, and we could do that when we were 18 years old. But Merrill and I were both the youngest in the class. I was 16 when I graduated, and you couldn't teach till you were 18. So I stayed home a year, and I think Merrill
Went to California immediately, and then stayed home a year.
Merrill would be my first cousin. Our mothers were sisters, and we all lived in the Mount Etna area. Merrill taught in the Mount Etna schools, which would have been the 4th through the 8th grade, I believe. And I don't remember a lot about it because I was young, but he was a good teacher.
Well, I wrote this song for the kids in my family, and the verse goes, "In the shadiest wood there lived an animal by a fallen limb, and the Bambi deer had to shed a tear every time she looked at him. He was very much the gentleman, but his coat held many a spine, so the folks next door would all ignore the poor little porcupine. What would you do, would you do, would you do? Tell me honestly, what would you do if you were a poor little, poor little, poor little, poor little porcupine too?" Now, whenever he went to see his girlfriend, like a fella does, he would slick his hair. But when he got there, what a tragedy it was. For when they'd begin to cuddle-bug, didn't matter how they'd try, suddenly a quill would stick them till they'd both pucker up and cry. What would you do? Would you do? Would you do? Tell me honestly, what would you do if you were a poor little, poor little, poor little, poor little porcupine too? When they saw what a fix the other animals gathered round about, someone said, "Begin," so they started in, pulling every sticker out. They were sure life could be beautiful for the Porky's romance then. But they weren't so wise. To their surprise, each needle grew back again. So,
Oh, what would you do? Would you do? Would you do? Tell me honestly, what would you do if you were a poor little, poor little, poor little, poor little porcupine too?
all the children loved it.
Oh, the young ones really loved it.
They'd sing the chorus, you know. What would you do? What would you do? What would you do? After landing in Normandy at Omaha Beach and then being flown to Italy to be on the front line. As an infantryman, I was part of 1st Armored Infantry Division. We started round robin, sending our poetry around. Sparks, to prevent your death, and just to get in contact with these people. I don't know whether you remember Edith Sitwell or not. She wrote and she read poems in a very different voice, up and down like this. Oh, up we go on the Ferris wheel, unwinding ourselves on the canting reel, to cast a calliope string of sight into the carnival world of night. See the lines of fidgety light bulbs glow in the eyes of the flooding human flow, and see the platformed barker begin at the three-ring circus to pack them in. Then down at the sideshow, look your fill as the girls in their bras and lace panties chill in the evening air of St. Louis blues as they kick their legs high in their high-heeled shoes. And there in the monster tent, see the slink from the brute who is tagged as the missing link, and the pygmies deformed, the sea serpent dead, and the lamb that was born with a human head. There's a game of chance. Come on, try your luck. All you have to do is shoot down the duck. If you knock the birdie off the board, a plastered Madonna is your reward. And look at the pen that is slimy with mud. See a man wring a chicken's neck, then drink the blood. And behold the God in his loin-clothed frame, who swells his great chest and burns in his flame. The snake pit is packed, and the snake pit is deep, and the boa constrictor will squirm in your sleep. The rattler will coil, the python will thrive on the innocent pig he swallowed alive. Oh, up we go on the Ferris wheel to shake off the earth and the corset spiel that is squeezing our heart in a burial gown. Up, up for a space before we start down. Vernon Duke was a close friend of mine, and he wrote April in Paris, Autumn in New York, or a lot of goodies. first they published it in England, McGibbon and Key. And then because it was received so well, they published it in New York, Bob's Merrill, and it was used as a supplementary text for universities because you had the original Russian on this side, and all but 3 of the translations here are mine. It was a 4-year job. Duke and I were commissioned to create a chamber cantata. This is the Cross of Merit from the St. Bridget Society, given to Vernon Duke and myself for our chamber cantata, Anima Eroica. He did the music, I did the... Our cantata premiered in Beverly Hills at a white tie and tails affair. I read the text also, and Lawrence Melchior came toddling across the stage to congratulate me. And here he is at my house in Hollywood. We're writing something. I don't know exactly what we're writing right then, but this is nice. May wolves and sharks stay away from Merrill Sparks, Vernon Duke, and so forth. So when I wrote back, and dare none rebuke my dear friend Vernon Duke. Well, I guess we'd never, no, we'd never, ever learn. After the wedding, I took a job as a soda jerk in the drugstore on Hollywood and Highland in Hollywood. And there was a Lebanese man who was a very nice man who was the cook for the people at the, it was a drugstore, but it also had a long counter where they served food. And he and I became very good friends, and I'd go over to his house, and he and I would horse around on the piano. And his wife said, "It's silly you're working down there for 35 cents an hour," whatever it was. I think it was about that. "You should be playing piano." So she says, "I'm going to get you a job." So she started looking through the want ads, and there was this rough, very successful bar down on Hill Street, downtown LA. And they drove me down, a nice platform, a nice full concert grand piano up on it, and it was just a hustling place. Wrestlers and fighters would come in and, show their muscles, and girls would want to be near those muscles. But anyway, I played for them and got the job. One day, this nice couple came in after I'd been there almost 2 years, sat at the bar. She was a very handsome redhead, short hair, and he was a nicely husky husband. And I took my break, and I passed by, and they said, "Can we buy you a drink?" I said, "Sure." "What are you drinking?" "Black Russian." And says, "Well," it says, "we own the Moulin Rouge. I'd like to have you come to work for us." My life changed. I guess we'd never learn. This is me in my Halloween costume for one Halloween when I was working at the Moulin Rouge in California. And Frances was pulling my leg like that, and she said, "Come, sit with us. Tell us, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Iowa," because she had never heard me speaking Italian to the others. She had said, "I don't believe it." She said, "I was born in Fairfield and grew up in Des Moines." So from then on, the Cagneys were my friends. And one of my treasured photos is I'm reading poetry. But I'm on stage, and they had this Russian poet there reading also. But here on the front row, this is Jimmy Cagney. And over here, a woman with dark glasses is his wife. And next to her, I think on the right side, is his sister, Jean. Just after I lived in Iowa and I went out, because Sergei, the artist here, has always been a dear friend of mine. And he was having an exhibition at the museum. And so I came out, and this is he with me, Sergei here, and this is a Russian poet. These are Sergei's paintings on the wall. He was just very generous with me. I never paid anything from, and I have quite a flock of his paintings. This is in my room upstairs, this one. I wrote a song, and a publisher took it, and do you remember K-Star? Well, anyway, the publisher had her in mind for it. So they had me, I was playing at a dinner house, but they had me on the alert all the time, because when she's back, we're going out to her place. So I went out there and to her home, and there were all these people. I stepped in, and they were from the record companies, from publicities, and all this. It was full. And I knew it was the wrong vibration. You know, they'd evidently been quarreling or something. But anyway, the publisher had thought K-Star could do it, and I thought so too. But anyway, a heart of gold. A heart of gold is what I'm after, to have and hold until I die. A love that's true, a little laughter, and someone who won't make me cry. And I don't remember all there's a counter melody in it, but I know they had a heart of gold, a heart that has to give away is what I'm after, some love to someone every day. Anyway, I did it, and so later, Kay was busy in the kitchen or something with all these people. I tell there had been bad vibrations. Then I said, well, the publisher and the record people were going to have you do the main melody, and then a group behind you would do a heart that has to give away. And Kay hit the piano. She says, if I'm going to do this song, I'm going to do both ways, the way I did, side by side. Well, that queered the whole thing. I went to work, and then I had a call from my publisher at the club where I was working, and he said, you've just seen the performance of the star before a hopeful songwriter or something like that, you know. Anyway, it was never done, so that's life. Vernon Duke was a close friend of mine.
Merrill and I are just dear friends.
Merrill was a very good friend.
Sergei has always been a dear friend of mine.
You couldn't ask for a better friend.
When the war ended, out of the division of 15,000, 2 of us were chosen from the 1st Armored Infantry to go to school in France. Pierre Conhagen and I were sent to France to study at the University of Besançon. While I was going to school at the University of Besançon, the French had a number of German prisoners, and they lived in the attic above Cité Universitaire, a building where I lived with the French students. And I'd go to eat in the dining hall, and there would be a few German soldiers there waiting to be taken out to do a day's work by the French soldiers. And this one man, Conrad, was always friendly, and we got speaking hello. Conrad had kept a diary during his time in the service, in active duty. And so we decided that since he spoke Italian and I spoke some Italian, and he had brought along a friend who spoke German, but also spoke English. So they would sneak down to my room in the Cité Universitaire in Besançon, the 3 of us, and start translating his journal when the time came for my course to be finished. And I think it's about between 3 and 4 months there. I went back to Germany, and then before I was to go back, my door kept being knocked on, and the German prisoners would sneak down and give me an envelope to take to mail in Germany, because the French weren't very sympathetic about having Germans mail from France, you know. So I had a whole bunch of letters to mail. I got to Germany, and I hitchhiked and rode, and even a hay wagon, and got to his family's home in Philipsburg, and knocked at the door, and a young girl came. I said, "Sind Sie Frau Odenwald? Are you Frau Odenwald?" Nein. So she called her mother. And so the mother came, and a rather large woman, but very pleasant face. And I said, "Sind Sie Frau Odenwald?" "Ja, ich bin. Yeah, I am." "Haben Sie einen Sohn? Do you have a son?" "Ja, ich habe. I have." "Where is he? Wo ist er?" "Weiß nicht. I don't know. Vielleicht in America." And then I had it all planned. I said, "Ich bin from Conrad gekommen. I've come from Conrad." And so from then on, I produced the letters. A ring. It was a ring. Okay. Yeah, I took a ring and gave it to them, and they were just, they were in tears when they saw it. When I got back to Germany, back to our units, I arranged so that I would have oftentimes weekends off so I could go down to Philipsburg and become acquainted with his family. So we became fast friends, and they visited me in Mount Etna, and then the husband of one of the daughters, Hans Peringer, and I became fast friends, and we still keep in contact.
Merrill loved his flowers. He loved Mount Etna. It meant so much to him. And everybody was glad to have him come back. And I learned so much from Merrill because Merrill knew all the history of Mount Etna and how he loved to travel. He liked, especially, to get out of the United States and overseas in different countries. And where I learned was when he come back and told me all about it.
He was friend of a friend of a friend who said, "You must meet this fellow. You will have a lot in common." And he was what I felt was a real find in Corning, Iowa. We seemed to be kindred spirits right away because my whole family was very much into music. I have an uncle who was in movies and wrote a lot of music. And so singing with my mother's band for a short period of time, an agent saw me and said, "Hey, you know, how would you like to contract with big bands and sing with big bands, big orchestras?" And I said, "Why, I would like that." Being
And how old were you then?
9 years old. Didn't know a thing. And but I thought I would like it. So from the time I was 9 until I was 21, I traveled all over the Southwest, contracting with bands at different times, and had a private tutor, and got my college and my high school just about the same time, all my credits. So that's what I did. I had a little bit of a background. I knew where Merrill was coming from anyway. Mm-hmm. I was in a book club that Merrill was in with Phil Allen, who was the voice of the NFO, which was in Corning at that time. And so we were all very good friends and just were interested in books and theater and music, and it was wonderful to have someone that I could sing with and practice with and be involved in musical theater. And so that's how I got to know him. We just became good buddies. He was like my big brother. Well, he was in the process of doing some research about the families of Adams County. And he had always known about the Acarian colony, which was a colony that was settled by French citizens outside Corning. And as he became more and more involved in the research, he found out more and more about the Acarian colony. and realized we had quite a few descendants in Corning.
In 1987, I went to a meeting that they had up at the Presbyterian Church. They had a national Icarian meeting in Omaha, and they came on a bus down to Corning, and they invited all the descendants of Icarians to this dinner. And I found out that there was a national organization, which I didn't know about before, and that they were going to have a meeting in Nauvoo the next July, and that would have been in 1988. So my husband and I, we went to the meeting in 1988 in Nauvoo, and we became a member of the National Society, and I've worked with it ever since. And I came back to Corning, and I called a meeting up at the library. I sent an invitation to about 30 people, and 15 showed up, and we started the Adams County Icarian Society. And I was the president, Merrill was the vice president, Bev Sickler was the secretary, Esther Hogan was the treasurer.
There was a group of 69 men who came in 1848 in New Orleans, and one of the men who became very important to Iowa was a man named Alfred Piquinard, and he was a young architect. He went on to design the Iowa State Capitol in Des Moines, as well as the Illinois State Capitol that is still in use in Springfield. The Icarians were the longest non-religious communal society in the history of our country. It was not built on any one religion, but they did adhere to Christian principles. The golden rule, treat one another as you would want yourself to be treated. One of their mottos was all for one and one for all. And every Sunday they would have, it was a day of rest for them and for fun for the children. They would have picnics. They would do musicals and plays in the dining hall. And they would invite the pioneers to come in and join them.
Of course, everything with Merrill is turned into poetry or music. And he phoned me one night and he said, you know, Eva, I have 3 songs written. Well, really, 2.5, but I should finish one tonight, the last one tonight. And I am writing a play about the Icarian colony, and I would like to promote it and get people in the community interested. Would you like to come and to my home and learn these songs and present them on Monday for our Rotary here in town? So I said, well, this is Friday night, I will try. Went to his home, learned the words to the song. He played them through a couple of times, and on Monday, at noon, we performed them for the Rotary Club. They were sold. They really liked the music.
Merrill called me one night and asked me if I was interested, and I said no. And I really didn't want that part. I thought it was very depressing. And so I said no. And we talked for quite a while on the phone, and he said, well, think about it, Carolyn. I'd done a few pieces in the community, and so I don't know how long it took, but he called me back again and came up and said, let's do it, come on. And I said, okay. And it was exciting, and it was such a wonderful tribute to our community. I have feelings of it now because it's very meaningful, as you well know. The story of Icaria is exciting, sad, and very true with history.
Now we're on the north end of Main Street, Corning, Iowa. And behind me, if you look carefully, you'll see a brownish building, and that is the Opera House upstairs and the Corning Adams County Free Press offices down below. Many traveler entertainments used to entertain at the Opera House, and two of them, local Corning people, well, one was from Mount Etna, Milo Green, they put on plays there, and some that Milo wrote. Milo also wrote a column for the Adams County Free Press when he was in Second World War in Africa and Italy. Oh, this first little outset, what do you call it here? It's boarded, the windows are boarded up. But that was the office of Dr. Wallahan, the man who delivered me in my home in Mount Etna in October 5th, 1922.
We met in California. He used to live in an old house that at one time had been, I imagine, a very large home. And it had been divided in 4 apartments, 2 in the bottom, 2 in the top. He lived in the top. The
With
house
a fireplace.
with a fireplace
And a sunroom.
and a sunroom,
Yeah.
and whatever. And in the back of the house was a parking place for the carriage or the house or the cars, whatever they have at that time. On top of the garage was an apartment, so I rented that apartment. And one summertime when I had my vacation and I was home, and he was home too, well, hardly we saw each other because I worked during the daytime and he slept, and then he went to work at night and I went to sleep at night, so we hardly see each other except saying hello, goodbye, and And one day I was there and he was there. He was loading his car because he took 2 or 3 months vacation during the summertime and came back here to Modena to be with his family, And so he asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I have vacation. Where are you going? Nowhere. I didn't have any money. I'm going to Iowa. Would you like to come over? And I never been east of Las Vegas. So I said, well, why not? It was a long trip because we had to, we went through, well, we had to cross Nebraska. And then the year after that, or 2 years after that, I was changing jobs. So I quit before his vacation. So I took like a month or 2 coming back with him here. And this house, that was an old house that was falling apart, was for sale, and so I bought it. And we started repairing the house that it needed very badly. The first time I finished the room, I looked at it and I just almost cried. So I had to start all over again. But eventually we had a place to stay. And I enjoy the garden because he will come over in the weekend and tell me what things, He's the artist and I'm just the peon, working. It was the same thing when people come over to be to have dinner or to be entertained. He will be entertaining, serving drinks, and playing the piano and singing, and I was in the kitchen.
I used to drive out to his home, and my husband was very, very understanding because Merrill and I are just dear friends. And we'd fix polenta, and that's where he would start playing, and we'd talk about and sing, and parts of things he had just written. It was another little part of the world, and when you drove back to town at night, it was like leaving somewhere in France or Italy. and then you come back into Adams County, Corning, Iowa. It's a big void in my life without Merrill.
The community of Corning formed a festival, a French festival. They were very proud of their French heritage, and so with Merrill's play kicking everything off, and they became very interested. And so for about 6 years, we had a French festival every year. And to promote that and to promote tourism in southwest Iowa, Merrill and I toured all over the state. And we were in parades, and we sang on street corners and in farmers markets.
Merrill gave parties. All his friends and come over, and family, and all
Family,
kind of people, related and non-related from California, will come over here. And, he will entertain, serve them champagne, and Ricardo will cook.
Ricardo was an excellent cook. And,
Oh, yes.
We had wonderful things then.
I can remember they would have little tea parties out here. They would have a nice little table set up, and they would entertain some town people, and they would come pretty well dressed up. I mean, flowing skirts, the whole bit, the hats, really. And he would take them through this brickway, and I just absolutely loved it.
The ladies will say, well, I didn't know we can have drinks in Maudena. So they were Methodists, they never drink in front of each other. So we had to have a combination of a few Methodists, a few Catholics,
Well, it did seem far away from much of the world here.
Yes, we were far away from
And
the world.
yeah, it was.
We were.
And it was nice. We were made private with all these trees and things around.
Boys, you come over to hunt, so they will stay here and go hunting pheasants.
Pheasants.
No, deer too.
Deer.
Yeah. Oh yes.
We had deer here.
Yeah.
We had many deer people here.
Yeah.
This house here had been a chicken house. Rosa Odenwald from Germany, and this is their son-in-law, Hans Peringer. This is my teenage best buddy and war and after from books from Corning. This is a friend that is still in California, but he's visited me here several times. He and his brother. His brother died. And this is my brother's wife, Nola. And this is Eva Breckenridge, whoever she is.
I have no clue who that woman is.
So our routine was we would have a buffet breakfast at the hotel, and I was very cheap. We had 3 people, but we only got 2 breakfasts. So Merrill and I would go down and have breakfast, and then I would stick croissants in my pocket
And yogurt.
yogurt, and bring them back to Eva, and she would have breakfast.
One of the really interesting things, we would go, of course, eat at least one meal a day at a cafe. And so here we would be sitting, and all these people around us, and Merrill would say hello to them in some language, And by the time we left there, Merrill had spoken to everyone around us in 5 different languages, carrying on a conversation, and everybody was talking, and we were sitting there just smiling, not understanding a word. And he was so happy. He was in his element.
This is one of my brother's daughters and her husband, Donna Noreen Fields. Here's another thing of my sister and her husband, Darwin and Elda Powell. And who's this man here? Ricardo H. Sorrow. And this person I've heard of, Love, I think.
Okay, love, yeah, love.
And Om is Om. And that's me. The Nunzio, he was my cat. Lola Kinell was a twin sister, and her twin was married to Victor Young, the Hollywood composer, Sweet Sue, When I Fall in Love, Golden Earrings. And Lola was a child born in Russia and educated in Switzerland and Germany. When Isadora Duncan, the dancer, came to Europe, she developed a passion for a Russian poet, Sergei Yesenin, and they married, and neither
could speak each other's language.
yeah. Yesenin
Isadora
could not
couldn't
speak
Russian,
English, and
Yesenin
Isadora couldn't, so they hired this young girl, Lola,
to be the translator.
who had 5 languages.
They will tell her to leave when they were through with talking. You know. I don't think they talked very much. The marriage didn't last very long.
Eddie and I and Dee Albrecht and John Spahn were all playing cards in the library when Merrill came in, was moving in. And he was carrying a Christmas cactus and he was losing the leaves off of it. And he started picking them up and was going to throw them in a wastebasket. And I yelled at him, "Don't you throw them away, you give them to me." And now then I've got Christmas cactus all over my apartment. So that's how I first met Merrill. Well, he plays the piano practically every day at lunch hour. And it really entertains people and it builds up their spirit.
I love the era of popular music from, say, about the 30s into early 60s. And that's the songs that Merrill mostly played. And Merrill had listened to Hit Parade, which is what I listened to, and I would be rooting for a certain song to be #1 on Hit Parade, and he had kept a diary. He brought over a notebook one day where he had been listening to Hit Parade and knew from years way back what the top 10 songs were.
He appreciates people. A lot of people don't understand, I don't think, that he would never say anything against anybody. It's probably one of the best things that has ever happened to this community.
Yes, Corning did miss him and still misses him. But they all understood that as he aged, he needed to be somewhere where he felt even more comfortable. Was he revered there? Merrill was loved, but certainly not revered. Merrill was accepted as every other citizen is accepted in Corning. Pull your own weight, do your own thing, you know, just good old Southwest Iowa values.
brothers underneath the skin, that we're part of a plan, and whatever our birth, if we love with our hearts, we will win. And I also believe, though it may sound naive, that we're all linked together, great and small. What I do touches you, how you'll be touches me, and it's all for one for all. I believe that a man should do good here on earth, that we're all brothers underneath the skin, that we're part of the plan, and whatever our birth, if we love with our hearts, we will win. And I also believe, though it may sound naive, that we're all linked together, great and small. What I do touches you, how you be touches me, and it's all for one for all.
Several years ago, I did a community policing project that my supervisor at the time wanted us to pick an area that we wanted to focus on, and I wanted to focus on the senior community. And so just out cold, I went to the senior center and Ecumenical Towers and met some of the people, and they happened to have a coffee going on, a coffee meeting about once a week, and started going to that and got to know several of the people and became a council member for RSVP, Retired Senior Volunteer Program. So as through the years I got to know several of the people, and through coffee, and Merrill eventually moved in to the Towers and met him that way, and have enjoyed his music and speaking with him and having lunch with him sometimes.
Just a really neat guy. Just so fun to talk to, and it just seems like that he brought a lot of joy to everyone that was up there for those meals, because occasionally he'd get talked into playing the piano, and the guy can really go down on the piano. Just really brightened up the lives of everybody up there, including me, and we take our 5-year-old up there occasionally too, and he really gets a kick out of it.
He probably knew, Florence wouldn't let his birthday go without something going on. I don't think he expected to be arrested.
And he went, did not resist, went willingly with us.
Arrest the subject and bring him before the court of his peers this 5th day of October 2008. Court will be held at 320 East Washington Street in Iowa City and in Forth, the County of Johnson, this 5th day of October 2008 in the afternoon. Signed, the Honorable Seymour Butts, District Judge.
I read the arrest warrant in senior dining, and then we took him into custody, and then took him outside for a while, and then when we decided it was he posted bond, time for him to released, we took him then to the Towers meeting room, and then that's where everyone was there to surprise him.
Happy birthday to you.